What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Remote Control Podcast. I am Robert, your host, and with me today is Colton Bird and Jonathan. Say hello, folks. Okay. So this is a special podcast. I want to
every podcast we do is a special podcast.
I want to start doing a DC-centric podcast once a month. I think we did one, about a month or two ago,
What about
DC.
Marvel?
And I do also want to do a Marvel one once a month.
No,
so
he doesn't.
I actually do. But, you know, again, it's a work in progress. We're going to see where everything goes, how people like them. The last episode that we did a couple months ago, people seemed to really enjoy. We had a lot of downloads. So hopefully this one does as well. Now, this one, though, is going to be focused on the build-up to Justice League, which comes out later this week. So we're going to talk about Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, as well as Wonder Woman and Suicide Squad, just to get amped up and ready for this monumental event of Justice League, because whether you want to admit to it or not, this is probably one of the biggest comic book movies to ever come out, and one of the most anticipated ones, because it has two, if not three, of the most recognizable superheroes of all time.
I told you.
Of all time in the movie. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go by movie, and we're going to just go in the order that they were released. We're going to talk about it. That's pretty much where we're going to go.
Self-explanatory.
Pretty easy. Yeah, pretty easy. I mean, review them, talk about what you liked about it, what you didn't like, and what you expect to come from Justice League is what we're going to get to. So, Man of Steel, boys. What'd you guys think? I mean, it came out in 2013.
Really?
Yeah.
It's been 4 years already?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think it was that
seem
long
like
ago.
it.
Yeah, I was going to say it didn't seem like it was long ago.
I recently just sat down and watched the movie again for the umpteenth time. I still think it's a masterpiece. I think it's the best movie in the DC universe. Batman vs. Superman's close second. Wonder Woman. See, I can't pick.
Fail.
But
Damn
I do know
good.
that Man of Steel is the best one in the DC universe. I think it has the most believable and most, not believable, but the best villain. Like the utilization of Zod as a villain, and not just it being Zod, but his reasoning for what he's doing. You don't see that in superhero films. Like, it makes sense. Like, he's not a bad person. He's doing what he needs to do to save his people. His, everything.
What do you mean, you people?
That's his whole idea is to just make sure that Krypton survives and continues forward. Like, that's not a bad thing.
No.
Yeah, that's not dick move. But
But the way he goes about it is what's
His dick move.
and what's bad. So, guys, what do you think? Man of Steel.
Good movie.
Very insightful. Very insightful.
Oh, no. Everybody else looked like they wanted to say something, so I shut up.
You don't give me a minute to gather my thoughts. Just good movie. Great movie.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think the villain absolutely.
I thought you were saying I
Shoots.
couldn't agree more. Great movie.
Fantastic movie. I just keep one up in myself. It is the perfect movie.
There has not been a movie that has ever come out that has been better.
I'm crying. I'm sobbing. I hate you so much. Knock at you back when you least expect it.
Be at work, just kick me in the back of the head.
Wandering around the floor, and you'll just get a random slot machine chair thrown at you.
Come over by laying down, just face first on the ground. Good movie.
Great movie.
Great throw. Just walks away. I look up, you've disappeared.
All right. So you were saying, John.
Okay.
I said what I needed to say. Great movie. I'm just kidding. I think that movie set the standard because of the villain, which honestly, I don't want to take away from the other movies, but I think that that's going to be a problem kind of moving forward because of how good Zod was and how good of, how how well that villain in particular, and his name escapes me, but who played Zod?
Michael Shannon.
How well he pushed it forward. He pushed the storyline of Superman forward, and I think it's going to be maybe not so much for the general public, but for people like us that recognize that and saw that, moving forward, it's going to be hard to find people that play a villain in that role to push those movies forward. And I wouldn't say super critical of it in Justice League, because it's Steppenwolf, and I mean he's a bigger character, but the real story behind Steppenwolf is Darkseid.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's going to
Don't
stop.
This is why I didn't want to be on this episode. something, Darkseid.
Great movie.
Great reference. Fades back into the background.
So yeah, I mean you're right when it comes to the villains. I am worried about the whole thing that's going to happen, because Ares, we're going to get into it with Wonder Woman, was a good villain but wasn't great.
No.
Lex Luthor and Batman v Superman, we're going to get into it. There was some missed opportunity there with Lex Luthor.
Yeah, about it.
But Zod, I mean, and I'm not taking a shot, Marvel fans, but Zod is literally like the best comic book villain that I think I've ever seen, whether it's, in any of the franchises that have come out. And this isn't a shot towards Marvel, because Marvel has had a lot of good films and a lot of good villains. I just think that this was the strongest villain in writing of a villain, and the reasoning behind everything he's doing that I think we've ever gotten. I mean,
no doubt about it.
We've come a long way since Riddler and Two-Face and Batman Forever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've come a long way from that kind of stuff. But, I mean, while the story was excellent, I think, the villain aspect of the story was excellent. I really, really love the idea of showing Clark Kent, Superman, before he's Superman, and him coping with being who he is. Mm-hmm. He is an outsider. He is an outcast. I mean, as somebody who grew up being an outcast because I was different, and part of the reason that I was different, I was really heavy into religion and comic books and Star Wars and stuff like that.
The reason I was an outcast pulls out some fucking hyper fucking reflexes.
But I mean,
No
I was.
reason.
People looked at me and made fun of me because I was into different things than they were. And nowadays, being a nerd, liking comic book movies and stuff like that isn't weird. But back in the 90s, it was.
So what you're saying is you were a hipster.
Sure.
Back before being a hipster was being hipster.
Sure.
Being uncool before it was cool.
Yeah. Is that what that? I guess.
Basically.
But, I mean, essentially, while I didn't have the superpowers that he had and stuff like that, I understand that aspect of.
I don't know. You just whipped one out.
Nobody knows where that fly went.
Yeah, he's gone.
So, I get that. I also like the idea of how his parents handle the situation, because we've seen in the past, Jonathan and Martha Kent are just like, hey, you're going to be something special someday. And that's pretty much where it ends. And then he goes and becomes Superman. In this, they're hiding. They're not just hiding him because they love him. They're not making him hide his abilities and everything because they love him. They fear what the world will think of him. They fear that the world will shun him. And that is a powerful message. That is something that, every parent, you want the best of your kids. You want them to, become something special. But, in this case, he's something that's never been seen before. And the way the world, they didn't know how the world would react. And that's a running theme in the movie is, when the time is right, you can come out and show who you are, and in a way, and you can. I don't know how either of you are going to feel about this, and how I feel about being progressive and everything like that. But I mean, this is an underlying tone for homosexuality or stuff like that. Like sometimes you're not ready to come out until you're ready. And that's the kind of idea that it has behind that. And I think it's a strong message. I think it worked very well. And then the introduction of Lois Lane, I think, is huge because she is his connection to the real world. Like once he becomes Superman, once he puts on that suit, he has his mother still, but his only real connection to the real world is Lois, and it starts in Man of Steel. So, excellent film all around, I think.
I think they did it right. I swear that's not the end of my thought. I saw him start to say something, and I was like, "What's gonna happen?"
I was gonna say great film, but I decided against it.
I hate to compare it to Supergirl, but I think they did that right in humanizing Superman first, because they didn't have to. I mean, granted, it is an origin story more or less, but it's Superman. You don't have the origin story Superman.
Yeah.
Instead, they humanize him, make him just like you or me, and while we don't deal with the struggle of, bullets bouncing off of us or having laser vision,
That'd be badass.
We all deal with certain things that are the same thing. This makes us different than everybody else. With Supergirl, it was just kind of, she becomes Supergirl, and then they try and humanize her, and it's kind of forced down your throat. Whereas, I mean, movie and TV different in a lot of areas, but I think that was the problem with Supergirl and why I did not like Supergirl as much as I enjoyed Man of Steel, because they're essentially the same person, just one's female, one's male.
Yeah.
Same powers, everything, and it should have been done similar in my opinion. But that humanizing aspect of Superman made it much more relatable, and it wasn't just drawing in comic book fans at that point. It was drawing in people that truly saw it as a good movie.
Yeah.
And that was the main thing. If you go in there and you don't have any comic book knowledge, it is a very, very good movie. It's not just, I'm going to see this because I'm a fan of Superman, and I'm going to see this because it's a good movie. And you watch it over and over again because that was the thing that kind of stuck out to me, was that it's a movie you can watch over and over again, and whereas some of the other ones aren't. Like Suicide Squad, you watch it once, it's like, oh, whatever, if it's on, maybe I'll watch it again, whereas I go out of my way sometimes because I want to watch Man of Steel.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to stick in my head, and it really set the bar high for DC, which I think has been a problem, more or less. I don't know, maybe not a problem, but more of like a thorn in the side of the DC movies, because it was so good that BVS and until Wonder Woman, it really paled in comparison to the greatness of that movie.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
I mean, you've had some time to collect your thoughts, Colton. You have much to say?
No, it's a good film. It's a good origin story, and you guys had everything. I don't have anything to add to the conversation.
I mean, I'm going to move on to directing. Zack Snyder obviously was the director of the movie. I think the great thing about his directing style is how the imagery that he uses, and how he makes a lot of references and similarities with Superman to Jesus. There's a lot of scenes in Man of Steel that are just phenomenal.
That have like the Christian undertone.
Exactly. The religious undertone, which I really love. You have him going to, after Zod, is like, hey, give me Superman or give me Kal-El or whatever, or else. Yeah. And Clark goes to a church and talks to a priest. It's very similar to how Jesus talked to God, went and prayed to God before he gave himself up, for the resurrection, or not the resurrection, for the crucifixion. Whoops, a little flub there. But, that's kind of, similar thing there. And then you have the moment, this is probably my favorite moment in this entire movie, is when they're up on Zod's ship and they're escaping, and, Lois gets in an escape pod and she's flying down towards Earth, and Superman's talking to Jor-El, and he's like, you can save them, Cal. You can save them all. And, he sees Lois, almost going to die because the pod's, is crashing. And he just puts his arms out and just floats off out into space, like in that pose of being hung on a cross, And that was him giving his life finally to the people of the world. Just like Jesus going on the cross, giving his life up for the people of the world. That was that. And it was just such an amazing moment. One of those things that I just love so much. And this movie, it hit me on a certain a level that I think it didn't hit a lot of people with. Not just because of the religious undertones, but because of the way Zack Snyder utilized the relationship between Clark and his Earth father, Jonathan Kent. And I should have touched on this with story, but how he was afraid to allow Clark to show his power, and he was so sure that it wasn't time that he didn't allow his son to rescue him, even though his son could have rescued him in that moment with that tornado. He didn't allow his son to rescue him because he believed that the world was not ready for him yet, and that's just, again, it's just powerful because, it's parents loving their children and wanting the best for their kids and stuff like that. It's so good. But the directing, I mean, what do you think? I mean, when it comes to Zack Snyder, he's done a lot of films now, a decent amount.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where would you rank this? I mean, in his filmography, I'm sure you've seen 300. I'm sure you saw Batman vs Superman. Did you see Sucker Punch?
No.
Did you see Dawn of the Dead, the remake of Dawn of the Dead?
No.
Okay. So out of what you've seen, though, what do you think?
One, because it's two of them.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, in reality, it's one of my all-time favorite movies. Like, I would feel fairly certain to put that in, just off the top of my head, put that in at the very least my top 10, just because of the story he told and how he did it. Like you said, I think that's a hard movie to make, and I don't say that because it's Superman. Superman's story has been told hundreds and hundreds of times in different formats and this and that, but because of that God comparison that he makes, and in making. Did I break something?
No, we're good.
No, we're good.
Are we good? Yeah. We're good.
Oh, okay. But I mean, that comparison and that fear of becoming a false idol, quote unquote, I think he portrayed very well. And I'd venture to say that I don't think that movie will be touched in DC. Yeah. I mean, Wonder Woman made a lot more money, but I think story-wise, I think moving forward with Superman-wise, I think that's going to play a huge role in how that Cavill's character develops. And I think Cavill recognizes that in the little that I've read on what he feels about Man of Steel. I think that he's taking that and he's going to run with it. And I think it's going to play huge parts in future, when we eventually, inevitably, will see Brainiac. We'll see Cyborg Superman and all the, the rest of them. I think that's going to play a huge part. And I think that Snyder instilled in Cavill what he needed for me to trust Cavill with that Superman role moving forward.
Colton, what do you think directing wise?
If you say great movie, I'm going to fight you right now.
Excellent movie.
Hard ass.
On list, I would have to say tied for one. 300. 300 was a really good movie.
Yeah.
But no, I like what he's done. He's portrayed an excellent story. Excellent story. Not great, excellent.
Acting. We're gonna jump to acting now. Henry Cavill as Superman, Amy Adams as Lois Lane,
Amy Adams is fucking hot.
Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. You have Kevin Costner, who played Robin Hood, as Jonathan Kent. You have Russell Crowe, who played Robin Hood as his other father, Jor-El. I always thought that was kind of humorous. Diane Lane as Martha Kent. I mean, excellent cast, and Michael Shannon as Zod, excellent cast. How do you think, or what do you guys think about Henry Cavill as Superman? Is he? Again, this is a big complaint, and don't get into Batman vs Superman or Justice League or anything where we're going. From seeing Man of Steel, that moment, are you okay the way he portrayed Superman? Because a lot of people had a problem with it, which is why it wasn't as big of a success critically as it should have been, I think.
I don't, because they had a plan at that point. I mean, when they made Man of Steel, granted it was years between Man of Steel and BVS, but Snyder already had his plan for that moving forward. I mean, even if it wasn't fully developed, that role he played and how big of a character lines Superman has, you don't want to give it all away and give everything off in one. You don't want to, maybe a little side note to like Brainiac or something like that, but like in moving forward, I think that he played it perfectly. I don't think I've never had. I'm trying to think of how to word this.
Great film.
He's probably the only character I never had a doubt about. Because when Gal Gadot was cast, she was relatively unknown. Ezra Miller was more or less unknown, and then Affleck, you knew who Affleck was, but could he portray Batman? You depending on which route of Batman, if they played a different Batman, like if they played the Bale Batman, I don't think he would have done as well as Batman as he is now. And don't get me wrong, he's phenomenal now, but had they done something different, when they cast Cavill, I was like that, he's going to hit Superman, and he did. He didn't let me down, and I have no issue with any casting. I don't have an issue with the way he portrayed it, especially now seeing what they've done. But I mean, even before BVS, I still believe that he was setting up for something more, and I think that that's what the point of the movie was. Is you humanize him a little bit and then show him growing, because I mean he is Superman, but he has a lot more to deal with than most people do, and you can't just make him a superhero. He's got to come into his own, kind of like I guess kind of like the way they're going with Flash. Not to get ahead of myself with Justice League, but he's relatively new. They're probably going to do a similar thing with him. And I think they'll do it well as long as Zack Snyder's vision stays within the realms, even though he stepped down. I think I have no issue with any of the castings, but on the same token, I don't think I've ever had any super serious issues with any castings that DC has released as of yet, other than those John Cena rumors.
Yeah.
No, I like.
I'll say it for you. Great movie.
There we go. Already broke them 2 episodes in.
And you weren't even here for the first one. This is the third.
Whatever. No, I think it was a good casting call. It was. I don't know. I feel like he's Superman. I don't know.
Okay, so
I couldn't see anybody else as Superman.
I mean, we had Christopher Reeve, back in the 70s and 80s in those films. But the most recent incarnation prior to Henry Cavill was Brandon Routh. He played Superman in Superman Returns, and I remember going to that movie and I didn't know what to expect. That was when I was really starting to get into comic book movies and comic books in general.
Nerd.
Like, I liked comic book movies and stuff when I was a kid, but it was all the cartoons. Like, yeah, we get a comic book here and there, but I never understood that there were storylines that, were going with everything. I was just like, I like Spider-Man, I like Batman, I like Superman. Like, that's what I liked. And, I understood the difference between Marvel and DC. It wasn't until, like, the mid-2000s where I was like, holy shit, there's, like, this huge universe with storylines that, interconnect and different things like that. So going into Superman Returns, I had no idea what to expect, with the exception that, okay, it was a continuation of those Christopher Reeves films from the 70s and 80s. And I thought Brandon Routh
almost did the same fucking thing I did.
Brandon Routh knocked it out of the park, I feel. I think he was excellent as Superman, and I was really worried whenever they were like, okay, we're not making another one with Brandon Routh, we're going to get a new Superman. I was like, but I like Brandon Routh. I like him. So when they brought Henry Cavill in, I for one was like, okay, I can see it. Like, I saw pictures of him. I think it was the Tudors he was in. And he was like the skinny boy, and I was like, I mean, if he bulks up, maybe he could do it. And shit did he bulk up?
Yeah.
And he pulled it off. And like you were saying, John, I mean, he was. Snyder wanted to do something different with the character, humanize him, make him somebody that we can try and really, because that's the hardest thing. How do you relate to Superman? How do you relate to this being that is overpowerful and more powerful than anything? And that's what they did, and they got Henry Cavill, who I think did a fantastic job, and everybody wants to call him Hobo Superman or Mopey Superman in that movie, but it's not that. I mean, he's humanized. He's humble. He doesn't know how to be, or who to be. That's why he's going around searching. That's what he's doing. And I think Cavill did an excellent job. Excuse me. Now, Amy Adams as Lois Lane. I was like, she's a redhead. How do you make Lois Lane a redhead? This is going to be weird.
She's soulless.
Interesting enough, she was almost cast as Lois Lane in Superman Returns, as was Cavill. Cavill was almost not Lois Lane, but as Superman in Superman Returns.
Great casting. Great casting there.
But, I mean, imagine that. Imagine if those two were in Superman Returns.
Yeah.
And then that movie doesn't go anywhere, and then they get new people.
And then we get Brandon Routh.
Yeah, I mean, that could have been what happened. That would have been weird, but I think it was an excellent casting choice for Amy Adams, because she is a very strong actress, and when she's on screen, she demands attention. When you see her there, you're paying attention, not just because she's beautiful, but she's a damn good actress. Yeah. And that's what I think was definitely a smart move on their part to cast her. Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. Again, it was one of those things, and this happened. Everybody was like, what? You're going to change the color of Perry White? He's a white guy. Now you're making him a black guy. Like, who cares? It's
the actor, not the...
Exactly. And I love Lawrence Fishburne as an actor. I think he's excellent, and I think he does a fine job. There's not much... He's not given much to do. I think he was given a little bit more in Batman vs. Superman, but I think he did fine. And then Michael Shannon, as we talked about, was excellent as Zod.
Yeah, that's untouchable.
I mean, Terrence Stamp, left his mark as Zod in Superman 2. And it was very, though, like it was wooden. It was a very wooden performance that Terrence Stamp did. Didn't show much emotion. Michael Shannon, while he continued that wooden approach, he at least had a lot more emotion with certain scenes, like that moment where he freaks out and he's looking at Lara, and he's like, I will find your son. I will find him. And he's like, I will find him. I'm like, God damn, he's going to find him.
You said great movie one more time.
So, I just think casting wise, it was done well. Acting, everybody did phenomenal. Christopher Maloney was in it a little bit. The guy from Law and Order,
I thought he was probably one of the more underrated roles because everybody sees him as Elliot from Law and Order.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of those shows are very cookie cutter, very storyline. I'm a bigger fan of those, but I think he was very good.
I wish they didn't kill him off. Honestly, what I was really hoping, I remember the rumors that were coming out before the movie was that he was going to be Lois Lane's father because her father is a military general or something like that. Like, that would have been awesome. Like, if we could have gotten more Christopher Maloney in these movies, I would have been all for it.
No doubt about it.
But I think he did excellent with the role that he was given. Again, it wasn't much, but the whole fight with him and Feora, I think were excellent. So yeah. Music wise, I mean, what do you guys think? I think Zimmer came. This is off the heels of him doing the Dark Knight trilogy, and he's coming to do Superman. Like, he just finished Dark Knight Rises and jumped into the Man of Steel.
There's a reason it's the album Wednesday last week. So
it was an excellent album.
like we were talking about before. I mean, it's one of those albums you can listen to and you see the movie, you see the struggle, you see the story just unfold as you listen to it before you'd even see it. Like, as opposed to the Justice League one, where right now we don't have much to go off of, but you don't feel a story going with that.
Yeah.
I think that one is not only excellent in terms of with the film, but it's an album you can sit and listen to without worrying, who cares about the film. It's just something that you can emotionally attach to.
And before you answer, Colton, I know it's a great album, but what do you think?
Excellent album. No, it's I agree with you guys. It's one of those ones where it tells the story of Superman without watching it, or even a hero's journey, so to say, without watching anything. Has a lot of emotion in it and stuff like that. So again, you guys are saying everything before I can say anything. I'm just refeeding lines.
Great movie.
Yeah, great movie, great album.
So overall, Man of Steel. If you're listening to this, you've probably seen it. But again, it's a great movie. And it starts the journey of Superman, and that's, I think, the most important aspect when we're talking about leading to Justice League is these three movies that specifically Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and Justice League. They are the story arc of Superman. It's the journey of Superman. And I think that's important to remember leading into the next film, which is Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. Now, I could sit here and we could talk about the theatrical cut. I have only seen the theatrical cut one time, so we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about the extended cut because that is the only true version of that movie there is, in my opinion. All right?
Tell us how you really feel, man. Damn.
Theatrical version sucked. That's how we really feel.
Yeah. Actually, I take that back. Last night, I was watching the special features of Batman vs. Superman, and it was the special features are on the theatrical disc of the Blu-ray. So I had to put in the theatrical disc to watch the special features, and after that I was like, you know what, I really want to watch the final act of the movie, which is basically from Batman vs. Superman through Doomsday. And I put it on, and like I'm sitting there, I'm like, where'd that scene go? Because I completely forgot that I had the theatrical cut in there. I'm like, why are these scenes? Damn it! So they're like legitimately. Like, I've seen the extended cut so many times that I now like it takes me off a little. Like, I'm like, what? That there's something missing. Like, I can tell. So the actual cut's terrible. But getting back to it, we're going to talk about story.
Not a great movie.
Theatrical cut.
Okay movie.
No, so story wise, like, what do you guys think? And I'm actually going to start with Colton, and I actually want to hear you talk because you say we're stealing stuff from you. We're saying everything before you can.
Great movie.
What do you think about it besides being a great movie?
Excellent movie. No, I'm gonna actually partake now. What, Batman vs Superman?
Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice
Welcome to the
Extended
party.
Edition.
Yeah, I've been zoned out for a bit. No, it's an excellent movie. I like how they brought in Wonder Woman because Superman was like, I gotta go save Lois Lane. Spoiler alert. Get this spear with kryptonite on it and stab this fucker in the chest. I like how Wonder Woman was in there. I mean, it was a nice side character. She didn't really have to be in it, I guess, technically. They could have wrote around her, but it was nice to see another superhero in there. No, all you guys look fucking bored at me.
I'm listening.
No, you guys look bored.
Listening intently.
Bored.
I feel like I should be egging you on and nagging you and making you laugh for no reason whatsoever.
Great movie.
But no, I feel like it did they should have taken off Batman vs Superman from the title. Just Dawn of Justice.
And you took my line from me. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Dawn of Justice should have just been the title of the movie, and it probably would have done better. Because it really doesn't say, it's not really Batman versus Superman. Except for, like, what, the final...
It's really like Luthor versus Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, like it's... Like, Dawn of Justice would have been a nice...
Superman versus Batman, yeah. No, yeah, you're right. Dawn of Justice would
like, it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. Probably more... Well, no, it's probably the middle movie. I liked Wonder Woman more than Man of Steel, though.
Okay.
Shit. No, I'm out of lines. No.
Silence both of you fuckers. I'll win for once.
No, I got stuff to say. I'm letting you guys talk first. Trust me, I got a lot to say.
I know you like live and breathe by the movie.
I really do.
I enjoyed the movie, but I completely agree that it should not have been BVS. I think it should have just been Dawn of Justice. But that's kind of, I think the biggest problem is that it's a build-up movie. And while I thought it was very good, it still is, to me, number 3 as far as DC coming out behind Wonder Woman and Man of Steel, though so far. But it is a filler movie, but the plot holes, I think, is what really ruined it for me. And maybe plot holes isn't the right thing, but you have Batman and Wonder Woman, 2 very, very capable superheroes, and instead you give it to the only person that's weak against kryptonite. You give him the kryptonite spear. Like, I understand maybe theatrics, and probably in retrospect to see where they're going, they probably did that on purpose to move forward with what they're going to do with him in Justice League.
I mean, I before you go on, easy explanation for that, because I am a big
nerd
promoter of this movie because I think it's a lot better than a lot of people give it credit for. But like in that instance there, Wonder Woman can't fly. Batman cannot stand up against Doomsday. He was only able, and he was trying to get a shot with his kryptonite gun just to help a little bit. Like all the scenes with Batman and Doomsday, Batman's running away the entire time. There's nothing he can do about it. Wonder Woman, imagine, because she can't fly, imagine she just walks up to him with the spear, like, "Hey, Doomsday," poke,
cattle prods him.
Like, what's she gonna do there? Like, he's just gonna bat her away. So they found a way that, okay, it makes sense. She has this lasso that's powerful that she can use to tie him up so Superman can come and do that. Now, did Superman know that that was going to happen? Did Wonder Woman and Batman know that Superman was going to be, or Wonder Woman and Batman know that Superman's going to come flying with a spear? No, that could be the plot hole. That's the little hole there is there. Not that, they give Superman, the man who's weak from kryptonite. No, he was really the only person that could do that right there. But it's just the issue is like, well, how did they know this was going to happen? That's all I have to say. But continue.
I mean, that was I also did not like. I mean, it may not be the last we see of Doomsday, but Doomsday is a very prominent character in Superman. I didn't think that was very well portrayed. I mean, it wasn't bad. He's just, he's a vicious monster. I get that, but I think they could have done a lot more with him. I think he should have been a bigger thorn in the side of Superman. Granted, again, we could see him again. He is a product of...
It'd be cool if they got him and, like, he comes back and he does, like, he learns to speak and you kind of hear Zod's voice behind it. Like, that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I would enjoy that a lot. I mean, but, that was some of my problems with it. But, I mean, basically funneling it down, by itself, I consider it a movie that I would like to watch. And that's kind of the end of it. But within the DCEU, I think it is the perfect development movie. I think a lot of people had a problem with Luther. I did not. I mean, it's different than what we've seen, but I think he played that role very well. I think, that kind of, I want to say psychopathic anarchist type deal that we're getting. I like that a lot. I like, whatever his name is. You know who I'm talking about? The guy that played Luther.
Oh,
Jesse
Eisenberg.
Eisenberg. Mark Zuckerberg from the Facebook movie.
I liked him in that role. That was one of my more concerning roles, hearing him as Luther. However, he did, and moving forward, I think he's going to be a very good character that they bring, because he's not done.
No,
there's no way in hell Luther's done.
He did shoot scenes for Justice League. Whether those scenes have been cut or not, there's been rumor that they were or not. So we'll see where that goes.
I like what they did with it. I like the development that's happening, especially because they didn't try and develop Batman in that movie. He's already established. He's already Batman. He is
the Knight.
He's the Dark Knight. Batman.
I like to think him as the White Knight, but okay.
Close enough. They don't focus on that, and it's not really a development story for the heroes. It's the development story for the story, more or less, and bringing in the Justice League. And overall, it's one of those movies where every time I watch it, I like it more and more. And because there's so convoluted, and anybody that's a true DC fan, you pick up something every time you watch it. Whether you forgot about it, initially, or it comes back, just little stuff like that, and little side notes, and it was awesome to see so much in one, and they didn't overload it. So you have Wonder Woman, you have Superman, you have Batman, which is the main storyline. But you also have Flash, you have Cyborg, you have the files that Bruce Wayne got from Luther, and you see just a little bit, enough to make you want to keep the story going, but not too much to where you're not anticipating Justice League. So I think it was done at a perfect time. I think the movie was done perfectly within the DCEU, and I think moving forward that a lot of people are going to see after Justice League and after Batman comes out and Wonder Woman 2 and Man of Steel 2, when I think people are going to go back and start watching that again and realizing how good of a movie it really was, and how well it established the current story we're going with Justice League. Yeah.
I mean, story wise, I will, agree. Take out the Batman vs Superman aspect of it, at least from the title. You can keep it in the movie, but I think that the fact that the marketing built up the BVS aspect of it so much that when you go into the movie and you're expecting it to be Batman vs Superman, and you get an 8-minute fight scene between the two of them, and you're just like, well, that's it. That was kind of disappointing. Now, I get that there's the whole aspect of, okay, Bruce Wayne was investigating, doing stuff, building up through the entire movie to face him, so it could still look at it that way. But I think calling it Dawn of Justice would have been better. I think that you could have had that riff with them earlier on in the movie, building to the Dawn of Justice and everything like that. The idea of Wonder Woman being in it, again, I think it's just the fault of marketing. I think that they shouldn't have announced her casting. I don't think they should have shown any promotional of her, because, and same with Doomsday. I think the biggest problem with this movie was the marketing. They just marketed it incorrectly, because there's a lot of elements of this movie that if you wouldn't have known about it, you would have gone into it and been like, holy shit, wow. The only thing that I was surprised that they kept hidden was Superman's death. They gave away Doomsday, they gave away Wonder Woman, they gave away Lex Luthor's plan, they gave away a lot of this stuff in the marketing. So going into the movie, you pretty much knew what was going to happen. You had an idea. So I think that was the biggest fault of the movie, not so much the story. While the story does have holes, there's some issues with it. I think that it was tough because, like you said, they weren't doing an origin of Batman. We already got that. The opening sequence shows the murder of his parents, but it's very important to show that because of the aspect of his mother. You have to understand that Martha, his mother, was an important part of his life, just like Superman's mother, Martha,
Yeah,
is an important character in his life. So, that was important to show that in the beginning. And there's a lot of people that were like, why? We've seen that hundreds of times already. Why do we need to see it again? Well, it is actually important. And it's always cool to see a different take on the murder of his parents as well, which is kind of weird and sickening to say it like that. But, it's interesting to see a different take.
Well, that's when the tone shifts. I mean, just to continue on that point, sorry to interrupt you, but that's like the turning point in the fight is when, did you say Martha, between Superman and Batman? Like, that's kind of when it really turns into them, I don't want to say coming together, but the tone shifts, and you can tell that, and it becomes, okay, we got to stop Doomsday instead of why are we fighting each other? And
that's
that
a momentary truce.
that you have to, you don't have to, but for the casual moviegoer, again, you have to show that scene of Superman dying, and he did it picture by picture with the comic book, which was very important, I think, because like I said before, you want to give the comic book fans something new, but you still want to,
stay true
to what we grew up on.
Yeah.
So that's a big scene, and quite frankly, I think probably, I don't want to say one of the best scenes in the movie, but probably one of the most important to show and to make it, to establish for that turning point in the whole movie. So I understand why people were like, we've seen this 100 times, but
yeah, and that's the thing. And I think where the story, where they struggled with the story was they were trying to show too much. They had Lex, they had Clark, they had Lois, they had Batman. Those were or Bruce. Those were the big storylines that they were trying to show. Lois was investigating to find out, and she was kind of the reveal of what Lex Luthor has been doing. Lex Luthor is trying to persuade Batman and Superman into fighting. Clark is trying to understand why the world hates him. He's trying to get the world to like him, but he's also trying to figure out who this Batman vigilante is. Then you have Batman who's trying to destroy Superman. Like, that's a lot of story to fit into a movie right there, and I think that's where the issue came. There was just too much to stick into that movie. Why 2.5 hours, it didn't work well. With the extended cut at 3 hours, it worked better. I'm not saying it was perfect, but it worked better because you had that extra 30 minutes to explain some of that. Now, getting to the story, the idea of Superman, the world being split on how they are accepting Superman. And this goes back to what I was saying about Man of Steel, and what a lot of people don't understand is Man of Steel said this was going to happen. It says this is going to happen in that movie. Jonathan Kent, his father's like, the world may not be ready for you. And it shows that there are people in the world who are accepting of Superman, but there are some people in the world who don't want to, like, the question, do we need a Superman, is asked in this movie. And it's true. It's do we need a Superman? And the Senator Finch goes, well, the thing is we have one. Yeah. The question shouldn't be anymore, do we need one? It's what should we do with the Superman? Like, what should he be allowed to do? What should he do? And that is such a powerful thing, because I really believe that they grounded and made it a little more realistic, because imagine the world today if a super being just showed up and started doing this shit. Us as comic book fans, like, fuck yeah.
Like, where do we get those steroids?
Exactly. But there's people in the world that be like, no, like, leave this planet, we don't want you here, get out of here. That's how the world would be. And you take a look at the other Superman movies, or even the comics, everybody's just accepting of Superman. That's not real life. That's not how it would be. And that's why, and a lot of people say that they don't like that aspect of this movie, but I love it. I love that idea. And Batman, Bruce Wayne is the side of the world that is against him, that doesn't want him. Then you have Lois, who's on the side of the world that does want him, that wants to prove that he is worth being, on the planet. So you have these two characters next to him who play opposite of him, who are, one's trying to help him, one's trying to get rid of him. And then he's stuck in the middle, and that's why this movie is so important, because there's the moment in the movie where, he goes on this journey, and he finds his father, and he's like, I don't know anymore. And, his father starts telling him the story about the flood and everything like that. And he goes, your mother, my wife, she was my world. Like, she was my rock. That's all that mattered to me. It's not what other people think. It's what she thought. And she was my world. And you hear that in kind of in the middle of the movie. And then towards the end, you get to the moment where he finally realizes, okay, Batman doesn't hate him anymore because he now understands him. That's why Batman doesn't hate him anymore. And really, that doesn't matter. What matters is Lois. Like, Lois, you're my world. Like, I don't care what anybody else thinks of me at this point in time. I need to defeat this being because I need to save you. I need to save you. I need to save the world. And I need to be the better person. I need to be somebody that they need me to be, that everybody needs me to be. In that moment, that's when he's like, okay, who cares if people hate me? I'm Superman. I'm going to do what I need to do to save the world. And that's what he does. And it's so impactful because that's what this story is. It's about, two sides, of the world, like not liking him or liking him, one side or the other. And eventually he just says, it doesn't matter what you think. I'm going to be Superman. And that's what it is, and that's what this whole journey has been from Man of Steel through Batman vs. Superman, is about him becoming Superman, being that symbol of hope, being that Superman that everybody loves and wants to see. And when we get into Justice League, that's what we're going to get. And will he have the little curly Q hair? Who knows? Maybe he will. But I think he's not going to be brooding. He's not going to be hobo Superman. He's going to be the Superman that everybody has wanted, and this has been the vision for so long. This is a Superman arc. And when you think about the story, that's what you have to look at. I do think that the Superman's death, the death of Superman storyline was a bit rushed. I with that said, I still liked it, because it was such a monumental event in the comics, that I feel like they kind of rushed it in the movies, but that it is what it is. Plus, we got Superman is dead and Superman Returns 10 years ago. Yeah. But again, that one just failed in that aspect of it. But
I think the death was, maybe a little rushed, but I also think it was very symbolic too, because that was kind of the pinnacle of that character development. Like you said, this is the time when he says, "Screw it, I'm here to save Lois. This is the right thing to do." And I think that. And again, when you say Lois symbolizes the world to him. That's one thing when you talk to people, it's hard for people to understand. Like, yes, he's saying, Lois, you're my world, but what he's saying that moment is, you are what's good in the world. You are everything that's in the world that is good and that I want to protect. And he wants to protect the world, and that's the idea behind it. On top of him loving her and wanting to protect her.
And they still use that play on words for the Justice League promotional stuff.
Yeah, for the trailer. Whenever
the trailer.
When the news goes, the world is in mourning. The world is still in mourning, and it's a picture of Lois in bed mourning the loss of Superman. It's cool.
They still play on the symbolism.
But no, I don't know what you're going to say.
Oh, that was it. I just honestly, I think that was, like I said before, it standalone is not, fantastic by any stretch of the word. But in terms of character development, I think it is probably going to be the most important movie in the DCEU because of that development with Superman. And I think they played off that development flawlessly from Man of Steel to BVS. I think that is going to be the pinnacle, and that a lot of people, I think, moving forward, if they haven't yet, because I have talked to a lot of people that said we saw it in theaters, we didn't like it, then you see the extended cut and it's like, wow, this is way better. That it has happened already, but I think it's exponentially going to happen, and it's going to get better reviews moving forward.
Continue with the story and talking about. I could sit here and talk about the story of BVS for hours. I really could.
Because they're going on like 28 minutes.
But there was a video I saw on YouTube the other day. There was a guy who he does this thing called. Is it really that good or something like that? Well, he did one, Is It Really That Bad? And the only movie that he's done with it is BVS. He said, I never wanted to do it, but BVS is really that bad, so I had to do this movie. So I started watching it. All right, I was like, look, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to see what he says and what he points out. And he literally says this at one point about the one scene with Clark and Lois. After Lois comes back from her trip, in the Middle East, she comes back and she's sitting in the bathtub, which is a very hot scene. She's sitting in the bathtub.
Shirt's coming off.
And Clark comes in there, and they're having their little banter. They're talking, and they're showing their relationship. And he literally says in his video, "This scene is pointless. It does nothing for the movie." And I'm like, I had to turn off at that point because I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Like, this has everything to do with the movie because it's all about Lois. Lois is the good part of the world that he enjoys, that he loves, that he needs to have this connection to. And it's that moment where you see their relationship building. You know, you see how he is with Lois. You see how Lois looks at him, how he looks at Lois, how he treats Lois. Like, that is such an important scene, because if you don't have that scene at the end of the movie,
It makes no sense.
it makes sense still, but it's not as impactful, you know, because you're seeing in the movie, you're seeing these two, they have a relationship. They truly love each other, and they have great chemistry, you know, and that's the great thing about that scene. And I literally had to turn that video off, because this guy had no idea what he was talking about when he was talking about Batman vs Superman, because he's talking about other things, and I'm just like, no, I can't do it anymore. And I messaged the guy. I was like, look, dude, I had to turn it off after you said this, you know, that there's no character development and this scene was pointless. I was like, you need to sit down with somebody who understands the movie and understands what Zack Snyder was doing before you make a video like this, because you don't get it.
Well, that's why I refuse to watch videos like that, because they don't look at it from, you know, by the casual moviegoer. Yeah, it looked really bad at first. You know, I would say that because I did not start getting hugely into the comic book scene till after I watched the extended cut. But a lot of those videos on there aren't, you know, the extreme comic book guy. I look at it like a video game.
Yeah.
You're not going to get the full video game anymore on day one.
Yeah. Mass Effect is a really good example of that.
They release DLCs, they release this, and you have to pay for them all.
Yeah.
Like, it's just ongoing and ongoing until you get the full effect. I don't think that anybody could have possibly given a flawless review of that movie until Justice League is through.
Yeah.
And maybe not even then, if they continue. I mean, if we don't see, like, rumor has it, you know, we don't see Superman until the end of the movie. If we don't see him till the end of the movie, that development may still not be finished until this next Justice League or the next Superman.
Man of Steel or something. Man of Steel 2.
So I take that stuff with a grain of salt. I don't even watch it. I don't bother, because I still believe that it is going to be one of the most important movies as far as Superman development. Not even just Superman, but Batman, because you see at that movie, he becomes a little more accepting. So that's the kind of the turning point where he says, okay, I might need some help with what's coming. So he gets people like Flash, people like Aquaman, you know, these people that are super powerful humans that normally he wouldn't. I mean, you see in one of the trailers, is it not Alfred
Gordon.
Gordon says, "Nice to see you playing well with others again." So that is, you know, that line alone tells me that was also a turning point for Batman in that moment in BVS when he accepts Superman and starts to work with him. So I could care less about what anybody that says it's bad. Just, you know, if they just say they didn't like it, that's one thing. You know, you cannot like a movie, but I don't think it was a bad movie. I think there were some parts of it that were iffy, but again, DCEU was still very new, very fresh. All they had was Snyder's vision to go off of at that point, and now you can see it multiplying exponentially. I mean, they're like, okay, Nightwing, okay, Shazam, we're going to do this. This is what we're doing moving forward. They have a pattern, and like a map, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. That, you know, they're moving forward. They're going to be. Some things still pop out at me, and I'm like, I don't know about this, but as far as the main story plot with the Justice League, I have all the confidence in the world in the DCEU.
What do you guys think of the inclusion of Aquaman, Flash, Cyborg in those files? Short little teases of the characters. Do you think it was forced? Do you think it was not needed at that point in time?
I didn't like the timing of it. I thought that being in that movie, I thought it was good for the movie itself. But I would have liked to see it. I don't know how they would have done it, but I kind of would have liked to see it a little bit more after Batman after Batman hits that turning point, because then you understand, okay, why is he looking for these people? But at the same token, the way they did it, it looks like, okay, he's just getting these people.
Well, you got to remember, he wasn't looking for that. He was looking for the information on the kryptonite. Like, that's what he was looking for, you know, and he stumbled in. Lex Luthor planted that information, or maybe he didn't plant that information. Maybe Bruce Wayne just stumbled across it. We don't know the full extent of that even. Maybe there's a plan that Luthor has with these other metahumans as well. We don't know, but you know, like that, to me, you know, I felt I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool to finally see Aquaman on the big screen, Flash on the big screen, you know, that kind of thing. Cyborg, that was cool. I think the only thing that worries me going forward, because you can tell Zack Snyder had a vision with this movie. You know, there's the moment in the movie where, you know, the Flash is coming back, you know, in time, and he's like, Bruce, you know, Lois is the key. You were right about him. That kind of thing that's going on. I worry that now that Snyder's backing out, that literally has nothing to do moving forward, and it's just going to be something that's in a movie that is never explained. Exactly, I'm worried about that, and also the visions. We didn't get enough on his nightmare. That nightmare scene where he sees the Omega symbol in the in the ground, and then you have the parademons. Like, why is he seeing that? What gave him that foresight in his dream? Like, what is that?
It's the Force.
Those are the only couple things that I really am worried about the movie, with things that were added in to expand the universe slightly. Overall, I think the story is good. I just think that you really have to watch it, and it does take a couple viewings to fully grasp and understand everything. And one of the big things when it comes to critics is they go see a movie because their critics the company's like, hey, critics, come watch a movie and then review us. So they go see it one time, and then they have to go, well, this is what we don't like about it. Yeah. I think that they need to start. I think some critics should start, and I think they would get a lot more notoriety if, with certain films, not all films, because some films you can go see. Like, we saw Murder on the Orient Express. Seeing that a second time would not change the way I viewed that movie because it's such a simplistic movie. But a movie like this, which is a little more in depth, and there's a lot of levels to it.
Extended universe. And
go see it 1 or 2, 3 times before you make a true review and rating on it. It wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt, and that's why I don't like what critics say. I don't like Rotten Tomatoes. I don't like that kind of thing because, to me, we'll talk about it on the podcast because there's other people that do care about it. Yeah. To me, I don't care if Rotten Tomatoes says a movie is the best movie ever or it's the worst movie ever. I'm gonna go see it if I want to see it. Yeah. It's that simple. But there are people that care about it, and that's why I don't like it because they don't get a fair shot at sometimes.
Critics often don't often speculate either. Whereas when we look at that movie, you look at the DCEU as a whole as opposed to just that movie. So I don't completely write them off, but I take it with a grain of salt just because they are reviewing that movie and that movie alone. Yeah. Whereas, the day after the movie comes out, you and I meet up and we talk, well, what if they go this way? What if they go that way?
Oh my God.
Oh, Mr. Me Bobkey.
Someone get a hot dog into screen today. Sorry. That one was just mean.
You're fired. So I trust the comic book fan more than I do the critic when it comes to these movies, at least. Now I may take it into account when you go see a standalone movie like It or whatever.
Yeah.
I would take that into account a little bit more, how they felt about the movie, how they felt about this and that. But like I said, they go to a movie, they review that movie, and that's it. They don't look at, okay, Man of Steel set up for this. This is setting up for this in Justice League, So standalone by itself, had I not seen Man of Steel, had I not known that a Justice League movie was coming, I may have been a little bit harsher. But you got to give them some wiggle room. You got to give them some time to develop the movie and develop the characters. And I think that's just what this was. And it was brilliantly done. And I think it was very good. I think it set the tone. I think everything's right now. At that point in time, I thought it was, I don't want to say flawless, but it was well placed, well timed, well done.
Directing, Zack Snyder obviously continued on his, I call it his trilogy. I call it his DC trilogy. Again, much like Man of Steel, so much symbolism in this movie. And not just religious symbolism, but poetic symbolism to Man of Steel and different things like that. A lot of my favorite scenes come at the end of the movie against Doomsday and after Doomsday is defeated. Probably the number one thing that sticks out to me the most, and why I think it's so important, because this plays off of that scene that I mentioned in Man of Steel. Whenever he sacrifices himself, he's finally giving up himself to the world to be Superman. And then in this movie, he fully sacrificed himself. He died for the people of Earth. And after he dies, the way that Batman is handing him down to Wonder Woman and Lois is very reminiscent of the pictures of showing Jesus being taken off the cross. And it's very, like, it's one of those things, just like, wow, it's powerful. It's a powerful moment. And with that, you see debris behind him that are in the shape of crosses, just like the crosses behind Jesus. So, that's one of my favorite things. Another thing that I really love when it comes to the symbolism is how he's killed by Doomsday. It completely mirrors the way that his father was killed by Zod, like being stabbed in the chest in a way, and it's just one of those things that only somebody who has a vision, who's continuing his own story, his idea, would be able to do. You couldn't, like, if Josh Whedon would have done all of Justice, because I guarantee we're going to see more, amazing visuals and religious undertones and poetic things, in Justice League. We're going to see it. But if you would have had somebody like Josh Whedon do the entire Justice League and Zack Snyder not involved at all, we wouldn't have seen it at all. And that's not a knock on Josh Whedon at all. That's the beauty of having one person doing a trilogy like this, and somebody who has such an eye, for directing, because he just, come on, that moment that Batman's running away from Doomsday and he uses a grappling hook, gets up onto a billboard, and the lightning right behind him. That's straight out of a Frank Miller graphic novel. Like, that's fucking phenomenal. Like, just a beautiful scene. And then you have Wonder Woman, just the way that he directed Wonder Woman, and then the moment that she jumps down right in front of Batman to save him, and the music, and we'll get into the music in a second, but the music just swells up, and you're just like, holy, like your heart starts to pump. You're like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And that's what Zack Snyder brought to the movie.
We're all quiet. And there's one giant red and blue bar right here, and then we get quiet again.
But again, he just brings this style that is amazing. And I know that there's a lot of desaturation to his movies and the way that he does things, but that's one of the things I really enjoy about him. That's his style. That's something that makes him stand out from other filmmakers. I mean, I personally, like, Zack Snyder, for me, he's one of those directors that is up there. You got your Spielbergs, your George Lucases, your Ron Howards, and for me, Zack Snyder's up there because of what he has accomplished. And yeah, a lot of his stuff has been divisive, but it's still amazing work, and the attention to detail that he does is, I think, phenomenal. So what do you guys think of directing? And even though I covered it all.
Pretty much great directing.
Yeah, excellent directing.
Glad we're here subject. For you. No, I do want to point out something, though. Now, don't get me wrong, Zack Snyder, I think, is absolutely brilliant. There's no other way to put it when it comes to the trilogy that he's put together. Mm-hmm. But the underlying thing to me, and that I think is going to be a very important role going forward, and I think he goes very unnoticed, is Jeff Johns' role in all of this. I mean, he has to play a role because he did incorporate 90%. I'm going to say 90%. That's probably a little high, but he's very, very, very involved in the DC universe as far as comics go.
Yeah. Now, Jeff Johns, very important, and I agree. However, he had very minimal control over Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. However, it's funny that you say that, because I was watching the special features of Batman vs. Superman last night, like I said, and there's a moment where Jeff Johns is talking, and he goes, the idea between having that moment where we really recognize that Bruce Wayne's mother's name is Martha and Superman's mother's name is Martha, and having that as a reason that they can connect, he's like, I think that's brilliant and powerful. Like, Jeff Johns, this person who everybody respects, is talking about the most controversial aspect of the movie and saying it's brilliant, that it's a great idea, and unless people watch these special features, they're not going to know that, it was partially Zack Snyder or David Goyer or Chris Terrio who wrote the movie. It could have been their idea, but Jeff Johns was all for it, and he thought it was a great idea. But go ahead about Jeff Johns.
Jeff Johns, I understand that he didn't have much to do with that, but he respects Snyder and what he did so much that I don't think he's going to let that vision stop. Even if Snyder is not involved, I think Jeff Johns is going to keep that going, because moving forward, Jeff Johns is really big parts of everything that I've seen so far. I mean, he did help a lot on Wonder Woman, and he is going to be probably one of I don't know, he's not actually directing, but he's going to be a big, huge part of Flashpoint, of the Green Lantern Corps. I don't know how much he has in Aquaman, but I'm assuming he'll be in that in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think he's going to let that die. Let Snyder, if we don't see Snyder again.
Yeah.
I hope we do, because I love what Snyder's done, and being the comic book nerd that I am, he is always going to be at the top of my list just because of what he's done with these 3 movies so far. I don't think that Jeff Johns will ever let this go to waste. I think he'll continue with you can't really continue with a similar storyline because eventually the storyline is going to stop, but I think he'll still do the same thing that Snyder was doing, and just a little bit of that scene where his parents die, right back to the basics of picture by picture exactly what was in the comic books with the gun underneath the pearls, everything. And I think Jeff Johns is going to be a major role player, and which is also why I don't have very much concern moving forward with the DCEU, is because I think they've recognized that. I also like what DC is learning from this. To go back to what you said about advertising and marketing, we learned a lot from marketing before BVS. And then you get to Wonder Woman, and now Justice League. Wonder Woman, nobody knew who Ares was till a week before the movie came out because people had seen it. So they're hiding a lot. In Justice League, these reviews say that there's still, in the second half of the movie, a lot of stuff that they have not even come close to revealing yet. So I think
probably at this point people are throwing it out on social media,
but regardless, they're learning from it, and I think moving forward they're going to keep Jeff Johns involved. I think he's going to have a really big part in these movies, and I have moving forward I have no concerns with what they're going to do.
Acting, pretty much the same as Man of Steel, but the 2 big changes are Gal Gadot and Ben Affleck, and Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. As you said, I think Luthor was portrayed perfectly. I love the way that not perfectly, but different and in a way.
And fit the movie.
And fit the movie, yeah. I like the idea of making him more of a 21st century type of guy instead of, the regular businessman that he's been in the comics and everything like that, making him more like a Mark Zuckerberg type of character, which, I think worked for the time of this movie. So I really like, and I look forward to what they're going to do with him. Ben Affleck as Batman, I was on board 100% the moment that I saw the announcement of Ben Affleck. I've told this story multiple times. I was actually sitting on my computer in my kitchen, and I was actually having a Facebook fight with people in another group, and I'm in the middle of the fight, and I'm heated, I'm pissed, I'm freaking out about people, I'm smacking the keys like, you fuckers, that kind of thing, freaking out. And I just go to hit refresh on my Facebook, and pops up Ben Affleck is cast as Batman. I see a message pop up for that thread that I was in. I go back, I go, you know what, screw you all, Batman was just cast, see ya. And I just stopped that, and I just dove in like, Ben Affleck is Batman, what's the possibilities, what could happen? So I started freaking out about it because I thought it was a great idea, and I think he portrayed it excellently, not just Batman but Bruce Wayne as well. He fits everything that Batman has ever been and Bruce Wayne has ever been. And say what you want about Christian Bale. Christian Bale did a good job. I have some issues with his portrayal. But before that, the best one that we really have was Michael Keaton. But even Michael Keaton struggled. There's, there were times where he was just a straight out killer. Like, he literally just puts a dynamite on a fat guy and pushes him. Batman would never do that. He doesn't do that. But in this one, Batman does kill, and there's a reason for it. There's a storyline behind why he kills, and he's not just going out and shooting people in the head.
He's not doing a GTA style.
Yeah, but he's not rescuing people. Like, there's that moment where somebody pulls out a grenade and he just kicks the guy and he dies. It's not because Batman wanted to kill him. Like, the guy could have, instead of jumping on the grenade, jumped the other way and survived. The guy killed himself. So it's things like that you see. The bat branding. You got to remember, in the movie, he's branding these guys not to get them killed in jail. Once he found out that they were being killed in jail, you could tell that he's like, oh shit, what am I doing? Yeah, because that was Lex Luthor who was doing that, who was getting these people killed in jail. So you can tell, that things are, yeah, he was a killer to a certain extent. It wasn't like he was just going out and killing for fun. There were circumstances and things that happened that, were causing that. The fight scene that he had in the warehouse, yeah, it was fucking brutal.
Yeah.
But, I mean, everybody's okay with that brutal fighting in a video game, but whenever you see it on screen, you're like, oh, but he's a killer. Well, what Batman has done in Batman Arkham is no worse than what he did here, so...
Yeah, I think Affleck was the shining star, not just because of being Affleck, but the balance that he played.
Yeah.
And like you said, and you think Batman, and you don't think that that's a hard role to cast. And looking at it, like if you just say, okay, Batman, you can think of a couple people that, or right off the top of your head, me individually, I was kind of upset at first because I really liked Jeffrey Dean Morgan and the idea of him as Batman. But I don't think he could have balanced the role as well as, granted, we may see that in the future, given the announcement of Flashpoint. I hope we do. But my mind could change. I don't think he would have balanced that very well. I think he would have brought too much Batman than Bruce Wayne, or vice versa. You know what I'm saying? But Affleck plays the two, because they're not two different characters, but they're two different personalities in one character. And I think that it was a very good choice.
And the best scene in the movie where you really see that is at Lex Luthor's party, and he goes down and he connects up the little computer thing, and he's standing there and what's her face? Crap, I can't think right now. Mercy comes down and is like, Mr. Wayne, what are you doing? And he just switches like that, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought the bathroom was down here. Too many tequilas, or something like that, or martinis, or teenies, or something like that. Like he completely switches to that Bruce Wayne, who's charming, who's like that's what you want to see in a Bruce Wayne. And we didn't get that with Christian Bale. He wasn't charming. You didn't get that with Keaton. You didn't get that with, okay, maybe George Clooney. But you didn't get that. The only time you've ever really gotten that is in Batman the Animated Series. Yeah. And seeing that on the big screen. And even Kevin Conroy, who voiced Batman in the Animated Series, was like, he is the Batman. Like, he's done everything that Batman is and should be. So
that absolutely, I mean, I pretty much hit the nail on the head. Was that being able to flip that switch is so important to me in a Batman role, and I think it was very important when they got a seasoned actor. I was just like it was with Deadshot. I was afraid that he was going to bring previous roles into it, but you kind of have to have a seasoned actor because he knows how to do that, and he does it very well. And I think that casting is probably, if not the best, one of the best castings of any comic book portrayal. I mean, I know we did this list before, but the more I talk about it, the more I see him, the more I love him as Batman. And Conroy, he is Batman. So as far as casting goes, though, I don't think I've ever seen something that I was like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing this? Sometimes it's like okay. But individually for BVS, I think casting was phenomenal, especially given how much was in it. I mean, it's your first view of Ezra Miller, of Jason Momoa, so you have a lot going on in that movie. Your first view of Eisenberg, of Affleck, and of Gal Gadot. I mean, you have so much in one movie, and you really see how good these actors are because of how much is going on and how much crossover. Especially, I mean, Affleck and Gadot are phenomenal together. As far as, I don't say tag teams, but as far as two actors working off of one another, they're way up there in terms of moviehood altogether, in my opinion. I top 10, probably top 5, and to see them play off of each other like that was just absolutely nerve-easing to me, I guess, because that's one of the biggest things moving forward is you have to worry about playing off of each other because there's so much of that within the DCEU and not just Justice League, but moving forward to the Green Lantern movie, to the Flashpoint movie, to everything, because there's so much involvement in all these story arcs. You have to worry about that moving forward. And as far as casting goes, they're killing it right now. Warner Brothers is just
killing it.
That's it. Great casting.
I mean, you got anything?
No, you guys fucking cleared the shelf again.
Gal Gadot, and talk about Gal Gadot because we haven't talked about
hot.
it.
Super hot. No, I think she has played an excellent Wonder Woman so far. Her accent I like her accent with Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Like it fits because Wonder Woman's
a little otherworldly.
Yeah,
that kind
it
of thing,
fits the other. I do like how she's kind of stepping into the role of being the role model for younger women or women in general. She's stepping up and she's filling the role really well. She's not being like, oh, I'm a woman, I'm in trouble. She's stepping up and kicking ass.
Yeah.
Like, she's no problem doing that at all. And I like how she did it in Batman vs. Superman. Like, she saved Batman 12 times.
No, I mean, Gal Gadot, I mean, she's, first off, beautiful. And when they cast her, I was concerned. Because I looked at her and I was like, chick from the Fast and the Furious movie? Like, really? Come on now, you know? And I was like, she's hot, yeah. I could get down with that, but can she do the physicality? Can she be empowering? Like, can she bring a presence? Because to me, Wonder Woman has to step on the screen and you have to immediately think like power, you know, like she's powerful.
She's one of the big three.
And again, this goes back to the directing. I mean, Zack Snyder pulled it off perfectly. That moment that you first see Wonder Woman in the movie in costume as Wonder Woman, she's saving Batman's life, you know, who is one of the most recognizable superheroes of all time, who everybody loves. She's rescuing him. And that, from that moment on, you're just like, she's a badass.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's probably one of the most important moments in her character development,
Yeah.
is that she comes out and she's saving Batman.
Yeah.
And it's not just because she's saving Batman, it's because it's Batman. You know, it's Batman and Superman are the top two you think of when it's like, oh, they don't need saved. But Wonder Woman's doing this, and it establishes her right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where she goes from this, doesn't matter how it works out. She's established. She is that symbol. And quite frankly, she could probably kick all of her asses 6 times over in 8
probably.
minutes.
I would enjoy every second. I'd be okay with that. I'd be like, spit in my mouth, please.
I'd pay for it.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, to finish up here, I mean, it's still one of the greatest lines with Gal Gadot. Or it's not her line, but it's, you know, Batman, you know, he looks at or is it Superman looks at, it's Superman that looks at Batman and he's like, is she with you? And he's like, I thought she was with you. And it's just one of those things, because it's like, you know, you're right. Yeah, while Batman had seen her in a few scenes prior, there's good reason for him to believe, after he's seen what he's seen, to think that she's a Kryptonian.
Yeah.
You know, and Cal knows that she's not a Kryptonian, or probably suspects she's not. So yeah, there's reason to believe that he would think that she's with her, or she's with him, because of the way she saved him. Yeah. So, you know, like it's just one of those scenes. It's just, you know, they say there's no lightheartedness in that movie, but there is. You know, there is some light scenes, and that's one of those scenes. It's just, you know, it's great. Like, and just Wonder Woman, dude, that moment that she gets knocked down by Doomsday, and she just looks and gives this smile, like.
It's like, you're into what I like.
So great. But gonna jump to the music side of things. Again, Hans Zimmer had a huge hand in the music of this movie, but Junkie XL then, you know, worked with him on it. Junkie XL was pretty vocal in bringing the more like harder, like industrial sound to the soundtrack, which I fucking love. I do believe this soundtrack is better than Man of Steel. While I love Man of Steel's soundtrack, I think Batman vs Superman is a lot better. And I mean, you talk, like I said, you know, earlier, you know, Beautiful Lie, that song that starts off the movie with the funeral of Bruce Wayne's parents, and, you know, showing the death of it, you know, just the piano playing, and you feel the pain, like it's taking you on that journey. You know that in that song, like, it fits it perfectly, because it's just like, wow, this is painful, you know. But there's also something that they do, whether it's Junkie or Zimmer, whoever helped, you know, the certain pieces of music here. There's times where it's not only is it sad, but it's majestic at times, you know, like the moment when Superman is dying, like he dies, like he's about to die, and he's taking the spear and stabbing Doomsday. That music, the build up, it's so majestic, and then it's just sad, and it's just like it really hits you. And obviously, like I said, you know, Is She With You, that song where Wonder Woman comes into it, you know, it's just badass that you get this electric cello. Everybody thinks it's an electric guitar. No, that's a fucking cello. You know, that's not a guitar. That is a cello that's playing there, and it's just badass. Like, it's just. So, what do you guys think of the music? It's excellent. Okay.
Next topic. Make music great again.
It's, you know, I think, man, I disagree in that I think Man of Steel was just a little bit better, but it's so much more fitting. You know, and I'm trying not to say that it's like I think Man of Steel was like I think it was perfect, but given the tone of that movie, it just fit right.
Yeah,
and I think that's the most important part of the score of a movie is how it fits and where it fits and with timing and everything like that. And he just he does it. It is the perfect fit for that movie. I just personally enjoyed the Man of Steel soundtrack much more.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, they're like neck and neck for me, but I do prefer Batman vs Superman slightly more.
I just just because maybe more so with the movie than with the soundtrack, just because it's the Superman soundtrack, and when I see that, I think the story of Superman. Whereas when you watch BVS, it's a little bit different. It does like you see the comic books in it a little bit, but it's still, like I said, a development story. So I don't sit there and think of these scenes when I'm listening to the BVS soundtrack. But I have no quarrels with it. I have no issues with it. I think it was perfect for what the movie was. It was just personally, I enjoyed Man of Steel a little bit better.
No, I liked it. I like. Stop laughing. I start every sentence like that. Every statement before I talk. I like music that when you can close your eyes, you can still think of a story. That's how I do most of my writing is based on music like that. So any soundtrack that has music like that, I instantly like it.
Yeah.
So it's about on par with Man of Steel. I'd like when I can close my eyes and be like, oh hey, here's a story, and write it.
Yeah, what are we up to now?
We're going on an hour and 20 minutes.
Wow. So hour and 20 minutes, 2 movies. We got 2 more to talk about, but I'm sure Suicide Squad here won't be too long.
Was it even necessary?
So Suicide Squad, it came out, it was exciting. It was like, okay, this is going to be different. They're doing something different. I can dig it. They're building the universe, going to try something different that Marvel's never done, Fox hasn't done, Sony hasn't done, something just different. And
you see why they didn't do it.
Well, see, here's the thing. Story-wise, it was tough. You had to squeeze in 7 characters, and then you had to have a goal. You had to have a villain, a common goal, a villain that they could all go after. And where this movie fails is that right there, because they had no idea what they were doing with the villain. I think they were just like, we need to have a villain. And that was about it, Yeah,
no character development.
Yeah, I mean,
for anybody at all.
I mean, she, Cara Delevingne, she's hot, and I mean, as Enchantress, I think she's even hotter. I don't know what it is with the makeup and the costume, but I think she's hotter.
Are you like a secret necrophiliac?
It was definitely the mud bath.
But I mean, that's all she really brought to it was just her look. She didn't have much acting to do. All she really did was do belly dancing. That's all she did.
She's on a book.
Yeah, and
very important book, but it's just a book.
Now, I mean, the standouts in the movie, and this one, I mean, talking about story, bringing the story in of Harley Quinn and Deadshot, the story aspects of those 2 characters, I think, were very important to build them. But why didn't Captain Boomerang get that much story? Why didn't why didn't Slipknot get that much story? Even though he dies in a minute and a half of the movie, Katana, there was no story for Katana.
Exactly.
So they failed in a lot of aspects.
I'm not gonna lie, when you said Slipknot, I was like, that's a whole 9-member band that you have to put a whole big other story in.
But they fell into this. I think they fell into this idea of like, let's make a superhero movie that's not about superheroes but about villains. And then Batman vs Superman was like so dark, and people were like, we don't like the darkness, and WB was like, well, let's lighten it up and put a bunch of colors
villains.
in it. And that's kind of what they did. And then they had the trailer company recut the film twice and do different things, and that's the problem, because there's elements of that story that could be done really well. The whole Joker and Harley Quinn aspect could have been done way cooler. And there's, from all accounts, there's a good hour and a half of Joker footage that we've never seen.
Yeah.
And then you have the whole Amanda Waller aspect of it, which she could have been the main villain herself.
Yeah.
You didn't need to have Enchantress there, or you could have still had Enchantress, but made Enchantress and the Suicide Squad going after Amanda Waller.
Yeah.
You know, and then the Suicide Squad has a choice. Do they save Amanda Waller and kill Enchantress, or do they join Enchantress and kill Amanda Waller? Like, that would have been a cool aspect, a little change of things there. So there's a lot of aspects of the story that could have been done well. They just didn't execute it properly. And that's the unfortunate part. So, I mean, story-wise, what do you guys think?
Rushed. If I had to boil it down to one word, I feel like they put Suicide Squad together in like a week, and then they just started filming.
They
Over
wrote
some brews in a bar.
more like 6 weeks. They wrote it in 6 weeks.
Like that was just too much to me. Now, there are some shining moments in that movie. Don't get me wrong. I loved Will Smith as Deadshot. I was very hesitant on that character at first.
Oh, he was easily a standout in the movie.
He drove that movie very well, and not just him. His play off of Margot Robbie, very, very important. I thought it could have been done a little bit better. I would have liked to see. Well, Bob sucks. I would have liked to see
The rise and fall of Super Bob.
Sean versus Bob, the fall of Bob.
Granted, I don't like the route they're taking with the Joker and Quinn. I never thought in 1,000 years, but not 1,000 years, 27 years.
God, I'm still the youngest person.
I checked my watch for that, in case you out there wanted to know. That Joker would have done all that just for her.
Yeah.
But it would have been, I think, really cool to see Deadshot versus Joker, maybe his underlying story, you know, some type of like a love triangle almost, if they wanted to go that route. Especially with how well they were playing off of each other. I thought that would have been cool. But I think it all boils down to the villain. If they'd have had a good villain, that movie would have been 10 times better than what it was. And Enchantress was not a villain. Whoever her
Incubus.
brother was, that was not a villain. That was a character. He was just there.
Yeah.
There was, he was just
Muscle.
trying to kill him. That was it. Like, I wouldn't call anybody in that a villain at all. Like you said, I would have really liked to see something more along the lines of, okay, Amanda Waller. Now they'll probably go that route in the future, given I do know she becomes quote unquote villain, at some point in the comics. But the story itself was dry. There just wasn't much to it. I think that the only reason that it had any success, whatever little it was the character and the castings, which a lot of people were worried about. But
Don't forget all the big name artists on the soundtrack too.
Yeah.
Like,
the soundtrack. This is what makes me mad, because they announced that they had a soundtrack that was music from the film of Suicide Squad, and I heard tracks, and it was more like a musical score. No, it was more like a musical score, and I was like, okay, so they're going to continue this route. Awesome. And then the soundtrack was released, and it was 21 Pilots and Wiz Khalifa, and I was just like, what happened? Like, and you can tell there was a big shift in tone, musically as well as story-wise and everything. And like you said, Deadshot was definitely a big shining point of the movie. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I mean, look, my daughter's name is Harley Quinn. We named her after Harley Quinn from Batman. Now, she is older than this movie. We named her before this movie, so like it had nothing to do with this movie. I'm a huge Harley Quinn fan. That's why my daughter's name is Harley Quinn. And they portrayed this character perfectly. Like, Margot Robbie was phenomenal. I mean, like you've said, in this universe, they have not gotten the casting wrong at all. Even with Jared Leto as Joker, a lot of people have problems with him. I don't think we've seen enough of him to have a true... true take or understand. Judgment on him.
I mean, that, like, my biggest problem is not with the casting; it's with how they're portraying the Joker. Because, like I said, I don't believe he would go through those kind of feats just for Quinn. Yeah, for his own personal gain, probably. But there's no, it's Stockholm syndrome and with Quinn, and then he just hates her. I mean, he just uses her.
And again, a lot of the deleted scenes. There's a lot of scenes where he is beating her. He is, like he's the Joker from the comics, and they're like, we can't have that in this movie, and so they cut it out. Like the scene that I've heard about the most is the helicopter scene when she's on the helicopter. There's in the movie it looks like she falls out of the helicopter. No, he fucking hits her and she falls out. That's what actually happens. And that's why then she's depressed. Because he technically crashes, but that's not why she's depressed. She's depressed because he beat her and stuff. That's the whole idea behind it, and it's all cut out of the movie. So. I mean, that I don't think there's much more to say about Suicide Squad, honestly, because I mean, the standouts. I love Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang. I want to see more of him. What?
I don't know where that's going.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was the comedic relief, and I really like that, and I think that's how Captain Boomerang. I like that idea of making him the comedic relief, especially if you put him in an Ezra Miller Flash movie. I
With
think
them two playing off of each other, I think it'll be brilliant.
Exactly. You know, now that you think about it, like you can see now. You know, so sitting there thinking about stuff like that, I think it would be pretty cool to see that. You know, Deadshot. There's been rumor that he was going to get his own movie. Whether that's going to happen or not, who knows? Harley Quinn's supposed to be getting a movie with the Joker, so we'll see where that goes. So there's a lot of stuff coming off of Suicide Squad as well as Suicide Squad 2. We'll see how that goes.
All these individual films should have came first. And Suicide Squad.
Well, they're just trying to take a different route. Like Marvel did that at the beginning. It was just individual film, and then it comes together. Whereas DC is a little, I don't want to say more established, but they can do that. You know, they have a little, like, even if you don't read DC, you know, okay, the Joker is Batman's villain. Harley Quinn is
Joker's
associated
girlfriend,
with the
and
Joker. You may not be correct on it, but you know they have some association, so you can get a little bit of.
And having a little backstory. I mean, they gave you backstory on who Amanda Waller is, because a lot of people wouldn't know who she is.
Yeah.
They gave you backstory in the movie of her. You know, Enchantress. They gave you a little bit. Captain Boomerang. They gave you the scene with the Flash. You're like, okay, he's a Flash villain. You know, so they give you a lot of different aspects of it. You know, some of them not so well. Like Katana. Like Katana is a cool fucking character.
Yeah.
And they just kind of like, yeah, there's this guy too. This person's coming with us too. She's got my back.
She's got a sword.
And she's got a sword that collects souls. What?
That's badass.
That's all you're gonna say?
Like, we're gonna ignore this? Like, oh yeah, she's a chick, got a sword.
Yeah.
Souls.
There were characters in that movie that I liked a lot that they just didn't develop. Now I understand. Inferno. Is that what
El Diablo.
El Diablo. I liked him a lot. I liked him. You know, and he didn't give us that much. I would have liked to see just a little bit more on him, just to see, because he comes in at the end and saves the day.
Yeah.
You know, I would have liked to see a little bit more development on it. Granted, if you did that, you probably wouldn't see that coming.
Yeah.
But, you know, after the fact, you want to see something, or him come out and say something along those lines. But, I mean, as far as the bright points, I think they're very, very bright. It's just a little bit, yeah, like I said, rushed. I think it was just too much of it. I think had they sat down and, you know, established a villain, I think that movie changes exponentially, and that becomes probably one of the brighter spots of the DCEU. Yeah. I wouldn't put it anywhere close to BVS or Man of Steel. But,
no.
You know, give them a villain, and that becomes a franchise in and of itself. It's Suicide Squad.
It's a nice one-off series.
But that's the thing, though. It was something different too. You know, that was the first time we had seen villains come together, and, you know, whether it be by choice or not. Come on, Bobby.
I don't know where it went. There it is.
It's right there.
Nope, it's over there now. Okay.
He lost his mojo.
You're letting the world down.
I don't remember my thought now, so good.
Yeah, I don't know. There's really nothing more to say about Suicide Squad. I mean, it is what it is. It's a movie that my kids enjoy, so I let my kids watch it.
It's fun. It's just, you know, when you sit down and you think about it, there's just a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
How I don't want to say wrong, but how lackluster
yeah.
it was.
And I will say, again, much like the Batman vs. Superman, the extended cut is better. It does add, you know, some more Joker and Harley Quinn scenes, which I really enjoy. So, you know, definitely check the extended cut out if you haven't. It may not change your opinion on the movie. It may change a little bit, who knows, but check it out if you haven't, because I think it's worth it. And then the final movie up into Justice League, it was Wonder Woman. Came out earlier this year. Both Colton and I raved about it for weeks after we saw it.
I told you to go see it. I saw it before you did.
No, you didn't. Wonder Woman, we saw it together.
No, we didn't. I saw it with my one friend. And I was like, do yourself a favor and go see this movie.
Are you sure?
Dead ass, B. Dead ass.
I don't remember. Okay, but yeah. I was going to see it anyways. There wasn't any reason why I wasn't going to see it. But again, story-wise, I think it was excellent. Showing Themyscira was beautiful. Yes. Hippolyta, her mother, was played perfectly, you know, and there was just so much to this movie that just it was such an important movie for its time, because, you know, the idea of all these superhero movies have been coming out, and there's just we've had strong female strong female characters in these films, but none were led. And this is the first superhero, you know. And don't get me wrong, yes, we had Catwoman years ago, we had Elektra, you know. not the same. You
No.
know, like
Not good.
not that not just because they weren't good, but
They're not quote unquote role models for women.
exactly,
everywhere.
they're not as noticeable as
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. So that's why I think this was such an important, aspect of the movie or of the movie of the time. And again, showing Themyscira, which was beautiful. Like, I could never imagine that they would get Themyscira like that. Like, I thought it was fantastic. The little girl, and this is kind of more with the casting, but the little girl who played little Diana Prince, like, she was adorable. Like, she's sitting there fighting with her arms. I was like, that's hilarious. It's like, she wants to be a warrior. That's kind of cool. And, there were some aspects of the story, though, that I felt were a little predictable. The whole God killer and stuff like that. I kind of, before, like, I know a good bit about Wonder Woman and everything like that, but I don't think it would have worked. Like, I think, and maybe it did trick some people, but I knew the sword wasn't the God killer. I knew it was going to be her. I knew that she had the power for all that. And again, not just because I read the comics and stuff, but I feel storyline wise, I don't think it was hidden well enough or utilized properly. But Steve Trevor, Chris Pine was fantastic. I wish they didn't kill him off, because would love to have seen him again. The idea of hiding Ares and her, going after Ares, the god of war, trying to help stop World War I and trying to kill and find Ares to kill him to stop it, was excellent, because she goes up against the one guy and thinks it's Ares, and she kills him, and the war's still going on, and it's not Ares. And again, that while I knew, I think that part of it worked. That little reveal, I think, really worked in the movie, because for a moment there, you're just like, shit, the world is really lost. Like, like, this is the world. This isn't the work of Ares. But then you find out that Ares is still alive and everything. So, what did you guys think of the story overall of Wonder Woman?
I'll let you go first.
Good story. Great story.
Damn it.
We're getting nowhere.
Look at my little story over there. No, I liked it. I like how they didn't really portray World War I wrong. Like, it had the feel of the 1912. Was that World War One?
Yeah, like
19
teens. Yeah,
yeah,
19
early
teens.
1900s.
Yeah.
19 teens.
It was something around 1912, and they didn't really like and how the movie starts in modern day and then goes back, and they don't just keep alternating, which was nice. You kept it in one time period, and that didn't really confuse too many people.
Mm-hmm.
Ares was kind of a lackluster super villain, though. So, yeah, I like the story up until the end.
On to you.
On to me.
I actually gave a legitimate answer there.
So naturally, I just have to say, great movie. But honestly, though, that's pretty much like you can sit there and pick it over with a fine-tooth comb, but there isn't, I don't think, anything bad to say about that movie. Patty
Jenkins.
Patty Jenkins was phenomenal. I think with Jeff Johns and whoever else was involved.
And Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder helped create the story of that movie.
And you can see that in some of the fight scenes and things like that. You can see Snyder, and that's I think that speaks loads for Zack Snyder, because you can pick apart some of his stuff, like it's him. That being said, I don't know where I was going with that. I just literally just had a complete
Great
loss
movie.
of everything I was about to say just left me, and that has never happened to me before.
Happens to me 5 times a minute. I
That's
say
impressive.
You're lost. I say you're lost most of the time because I don't remember what I was talking about.
Okay. The only reason I remember this is because he was talking and he said that how they portrayed World War I correctly. I loved that they did that and still put her in it, and it still fit.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if Wonder Woman is involved in World War I, it's going to be massively different. But they still kept it very, very much the same, very real, and still had her in it. And I personally think that I don't think we'll see a better quote unquote origin story than we did with her.
Yeah,
I don't think that'll be topped.
I mean,
as far as it's
I will
concerned.
say that the villain, this was, with the exception of Suicide Squad, they fell flat with the villain. It was a very generic villain. While there was the twist and the reveal of who the villain actually was, the ending fight with the villain was very formulaic. It was just like, all right, so the hero's going to fight the villain gets the upper hand, and the hero, realizes something, in this case it was seeing Steve Trevor sacrifice himself, for the world, and so she had to then, that awoke in her, what she needed to do. Typical, hero versus villain in most comic book movies. I think that's the only thing in that movie that I have a problem. It's not a problem. It's just, one of those things. It's like, if they could have just fleshed that out a little bit better. But, the movie is excellent, and getting with the directing of Patty Jenkins, who hadn't directed a movie in 11 years after directing Monster, however many years ago, and she comes in and just knocks out of the fucking park, and creates possibly one of the most iconic superhero scenes in all of superhero movies to date in the No Man's Land scene. I mean, that is that what you wrote down?
No, something else. That was for this podcast as a whole.
But as she walks up that ladder, and in the slow motion, and she gets up there, and it's just I can't imagine what little girls feel when they see that.
Can't.
I can't. But it's got to be one of those things that's just like empowering. It's just amazing.
You want.
Exactly, and and then it just goes from there. No Man's Land into the town, and she just starts fucking shit up, and knocking soldiers left and right.
I came to fight and fucking. I don't see your brother, so.
I mean, she tears shit up. And it's phenomenal. And I know I've said this in the past, and I need to just do my research to find out for sure. But I'm pretty sure Zack Snyder helped with some of the action scenes in the movie, and he was also cast in a cameo, small role in the movie as well. But he did definitely help with the story. He did help come up with the story and everything for the movie. So, Wonder Woman, just such a fantastic movie of empowering women, empowering, just the idea of women being female-led superhero movies. That's a huge deal, and we're gonna see it with Marvel now, and in a couple years with Captain Marvel, and I don't think it's going to be able to stand up to Wonder Woman. That's not it won't be a knock on Captain Marvel or what Marvel does, but I think that they missed the ball. They missed the chance.
DC did it too, right?
Yeah, they did it perfectly, near perfection, and Marvel hasn't had that near perfect film yet, and maybe they will get it with that. But this truly is, Wonder Woman is a near perfect superhero film in my opinion. Like I say Man of Steel is better. I think that origin story, because it hits all aspects of an origin story as well as villain perfectly, Wonder Woman has all the aspects except for villain, and that's why I would rank it below Man of Steel, but it's still a very good movie. And Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman is just fantastic. I mean, she's adorable in this movie at times. Like there's, just her questioning of the real world and things like that.
To the world.
Exactly. It's just it's one of those things that I don't think another actress could have pulled it off like her. I just don't think it could have been done. But
the villain doesn't really bother me that much in the movie, though, or the lack thereof, I guess, just because it's so focused on her.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily her struggle against a villain. Whereas if you look at Man of Steel, part of Superman's struggle is brought on by Zod, I guess, in a sense. Whereas it's not the same with Wonder Woman. I think it's more how she develops and all that. So the villain didn't bother me so much. I do recognize that it is a lack of villain, but it didn't really bother me. It didn't make the movie any worse or
the movie
but again, with that switch, I think she's got it nailed perfectly. I mean, granted, you don't talk about that as much as you do Batman, Bruce Wayne, but the switch from Wonder Woman to Diana.
And you don't see it so much in Wonder Woman. You see it in Batman vs Superman. I think we're going to see it big time in Justice League. Bless you. But I think the big thing about it is, she does have this, because in Wonder Woman, she doesn't realize she has to be different at both times. Like, she's just Diana Themyscira, you know, like she's not Wonder Woman, she's not Diana, she's just Diana Themyscira. So I think that it was neat because at the end of the movie, you like at the beginning of the movie you see her as Diana, and then at the end of the movie you see her as Diana and Wonder Woman, and you see the change there, which I really like. So the music, which was done by Rupert Gregson Williams, I can never remember that name, I think is fantastic. The nice thing, that what I think was excellent idea of Warner Brothers to do was they brought in somebody who has worked with Hans Zimmer in the past, so had an understanding of how Hans Zimmer conducts and composes and stuff like that. Not conducts, but composes music. And Rupert was able to come in and take the Wonder Woman theme and utilize it almost perfectly into this movie, while extending it, making it bigger. Because I actually prefer the Wonder Woman version than the Batman vs Superman version, which I think is phenomenal. Yeah. But I think because it's extended, that whole No Man Land scene, that's the build up to it. You know, it's the music in that scene all the way to the town. Once she gets in the town, then the cello just starts going crazy again, and you're just like, fuck yeah, and it just goes crazy. And
Bob goes from chub to full erection.
And it's one of those things that music, again, I've said this so many times, it's such an important part of a film. And when you change the tone of the music so drastically, like it seems like they're doing with Justice League, I feel it's going to hurt the franchise and the universe more than help it. And they didn't do that with Wonder Woman. They kept it very, like, Rupert isn't a Zimmer. Like, he's got a very different type of approach to music, but he understands, because he's worked with Zimmer, he understands how to utilize and fit those similar tones into what he made, and I thought it was done really well. So musically, do you guys have anything?
I got nothing.
No, I love the Wonder Woman theme, though.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I have to say about that.
It's been my ringtone on my phone for probably 2 years now. So.
Oh my God, yeah. I've never thought about it.
But I mean, that's pretty much been the build up to Justice League. So real quick, what are your expectations for Justice League? I'm going to start with you, John.
At this point, it's hard to expect. You know what I mean? We've heard little snippets, and that's really it. And that's personally all I want. Yeah. You know, we've heard that Ezra Miller steals the show, and while I'm happy at that, that's still like it's kind of, Ezra Miller is still, I don't want to say on the fence with me, because I think he's going to do well in what they give him, but he's still just not the Flash to me. Mm-hmm. And you know, I get it. You know, I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be a shining star moving forward. But to me, Flash is still somebody that, you know, he's a little bit nerdy, but he's also bulk. He can handle his own, and I think that may hinder me a little bit, just because I still see it that way. I'm still looking very much forward to hopefully seeing who the hell they're casting as Green Lanterns. This is all I've wanted since the moment they announced that they were doing another DC universe. They were starting the DC universe similar to what Marvel has. All I wanted to know was who the hell are they going to play as these Green Lanterns? Which
us. I'd sign a contract right now.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd be like, here we go. $5 and a firm handshake? Hell yeah. I'll take 6 months off of work for it. The difference between me and you guys is you get paid to not be there.
I don't even have an argument for that. Which it isn't an important part to the movie, but it is just, you know, to me, for my, you know, personal reasons. But again, I think so far what we've seen, and not just in the trailers and in the other movies, in the little stuff, the photos that Zack Snyder started releasing, the little behind the scenes, you know, stuff like those goofy things that, you know, with Momoa, I think they're going to play really well off each other. And I think regardless of what, you know, everybody's concerned with Whedon putting too much of him as opposed to Snyder in the movie, I think regardless of what happens there, I think those core players playing off of each other, you know, playing well off of each other, as we've already seen Godot and Batman do, and a little bit with, you know, Cavill. I don't think Flash and Aquaman are as important, because they have announced that they're still, well, you see in the trailer that Flash is new to his
his role. You know, he says himself, "I just run up and push some people and then run away." And they have previously announced that Aquaman is still new to his mantle, or he hasn't become king of Atlantis yet, quote unquote, whatever that
He's
may
just
be.
a pupil of Atlantis. Little larva floating around there.
So I don't think they're going to be as important this round. I think they're going to be good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're going to be as important of a role. I just think that the big three are the driving force right now.
Bob's drinking his power juice. He's gaining his superpowers.
He'll be able to catch that and fly now. But that being said, it is nothing but sheer excitement at this point. I don't care. This movie could go in, we could go in, and I don't think it will be, but it could be bad. I really think that it could still be bad, and I would still enjoy it just because of the fact that it is the Justice League, and we know moving forward who these players are that we think they're going to be good in these roles, and quite frankly, that'll get me past it. Because the Justice League movie, while it is a big milestone, it's going to be, again, developmental, because it's their come together movie. I don't expect them to be perfect right off the bat. I just expect it to be good enough to move forward, to be honest with you.
Colton, what do you think?
I'm gonna say it's gonna be a good movie. And
Not excellent, not great,
no, hold
phenomenal.
on. It's gonna be a good movie. I do think at maybe mid-credit scene, end-credit scene, we're gonna see something alluding to the Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter. I think we're gonna get those two characters next.
I don't want speculation on what we're gonna see. I want to. What
Well,
do you
I
think?
mean-
What do you think you're gonna get out of the movie?
Full erection.
Okay.
Well, and on that note, good talking to you guys.
I think we're gonna the soundtrack is going to be better than what you expect it to be.
God, I hope so.
I think it's gonna play better in the scenes than what you're expecting. I think we're gonna see a pretty okay supervillain. I think we're gonna see that. We're gonna see a very clunky Justice League. They're not gonna know how to fight together at first, and then we're gonna see them come together.
Come together.
Yeah, that's gonna play, and then they're just gonna start taking turns fisting Steppenwolf. That's what's gonna happen.
That's interesting. I really think that this is going to bring us the symbol of hope for the universe. I think the whole idea of Superman coming back, the resurrection, hope, all that kind of stuff is going to come with it. I think we're going to finally really understand what this Superman arc has been about. Again, it's been his journey. Yes, we've had supporting characters of these other superheroes in it, but this is Superman's story, and I think this is going to be the movie that finally says, look, this has been Superman's story, because there's still people out there who don't realize that this is Superman's story, and I'm going to say Superman's story so many more times because it's Superman's story.
Whose story is it?
Superman's story.
Yeah,
So,
one more time. I don't think you mentioned it.
but I think that's going to be the overbearing, not overbearing, but that's what this is. It's all about him, and I think that he's going to come back a lot sooner than a lot of people think. A lot of people are like, oh, he's going to come the end of the movie. No, I think he's going to be back before the halfway point of the movie. I think, but when he comes back,
I'm going to say
it's going to be
38-minute mark.
I don't know about. Oh, let's see. It's a 2-hour-long movie. I'd say 45-minute mark. Bring it.
38, my God.
But yeah, that's kind of what I see. So I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to be seeing it on Thursday.
Hold on, you're going into the ending stuff here. What do you speculate? What's the biggest thing you think you're going to see that no one else is going to expect?
The biggest thing that I think we'll see in this movie that no one else would expect.
Like how I said,
Batman's death.
Ooh.
I do. I have this weird feeling. That's one of the reasons why I don't want to see spoilers, because I just had this feeling that there's this transition of moving away from Batman. I think we may see Batman sacrifice himself in some sort.
It'd be a ballsy move that early in the. But I mean,
I'm just saying, like, I just have, because of all the controversy around Affleck, what's the easiest way to get rid of him? Kill him off. And if they do it right, it could work. But again, I'm not saying I'm not saying I want it to happen, people. So if you're screaming at your iPhones right now, I'm sorry. It's just,
I had this stereotype Apple users.
I just I just have this weird feeling that that's something that could happen.
Now that I see it, I can't unsee it. I honestly, I do not know. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that hasn't been already speculated or anything like that. Maybe the only thing I could think of is that they fail. At the end of the movie, I think that they fail. Not necessarily fail. I don't think it's going to be your typical superhero movie where they just beat Steppenwolf.
Yeah,
I
they
think,
just prolong him.
They hold him off, and eventually Steppenwolf gets what he needs and takes off, and that's how they cut in the dark side. So that's probably the only thing that I could even remotely put together is that, because I mean, we've heard rumors of Green Lantern coming in, of Superman doing this and that, and having the dark Superman and all that jazz. But as far as that goes, I think that's. It could go either way. They beat Steppenwolf. Darkseid finds out, he comes in, or Steppenwolf gets away, and then they come back and they have an even bigger threat because they have to worry about Steppenwolf and Darkseid coming into play with the next Justice League, or 2 Justice Leagues from now. I mean, there's no guarantee that we're getting Darkseid next time. Nothing's. Darkseid's name isn't even mentioned. We just know Darkseid because of him being Steppenwolf being one of his generals. Yeah. So moving forward, you never know, but I think that's probably the biggest thing that I could maybe see, but nobody would expect that.
Playing off of him, Steppenwolf gets away, and then you have a reason to bring the Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, mid-credit scene. Post-credit scene, you have Darkseid.
Maybe. I don't know, but like I said, we're gonna see it this Thursday. Well, Colton and I will see it. I know. John, you got a crappy work schedule this week, so. But you'll see it. You'll see it soon enough, I'm sure.
3 days off every week now, so
It must be noise.
And we will be talking about Justice League for probably the next couple of weeks because it's kind of a big deal. I'm going to probably see it like 13 times this weekend. But we will see it. We will be talking all about it on next week's Remote Control podcast, where we're going to do a full review of it and everything like that. Just like we talked about these movies here, we're going to talk about Justice League. That's what we're going to do. We got a new format for how we review things, and this was kind of the testing for it to talk about the 4 topics I talked about, which was story, directing, acting, and music. So I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you haven't yet, follow us on Facebook, on Twitter at The Remote Control. Follow us on Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And you can also find us on Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, all that fun stuff. So make sure you subscribe to us and tell us what you think about the show. But with all that said, I've been Robert, and with me was...
Skinny Penis.
And...
Hi.
Take it easy, everyone.
Ba, ba, ba.